In a small, forgotten village, nestled deep within a valley, a river flowed, deep and relentless. This river wasn't just a body of water. It was a division, a line that split the community in two, both physically and in spirit. And spanning this divide, or at least attempting to, stood a half-finished bridge. For 20 long years it waited. Its wooden beams, weathered and gray, stretched out like a desperate hand reaching for something it could never quite touch. It stood untouched, a monument to a forgotten dream, silent save for the whisper of the wind through its skeletal frame. The villagers had a name for it: the Cursed Bridge. A story passed down through generations, a cautionary tale whispered to children at bedtime. They said a shadow lingered there, a malevolent spirit that had claimed the original builders, pulling them into the dark waters below. No one dared to finish it. The fear was a wall, higher and more formidable than any physical barrier. No one dared to cross the gap, and so the village remained divided, the two halves growing more distant with each passing year, like estranged siblings. The bridge was a symbol not of connection, but of their collective paralysis, a constant, nagging reminder of a task left undone and a fear left unconquered. Then, one morning, as the sun's first rays painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, a stranger arrived. He walked with a quiet confidence that seemed out of place in the anxious village. He carried no grand tools or heavy luggage, just a small, worn bag slung over his shoulder and a simple notebook clutched in his hand. His eyes, clear and observant, took in the village, the river, and the skeletal bridge. The villagers, ever watchful, soon approached him. The elder, his face a roadmap of worry, pointed a trembling finger towards the half-built structure. "Stranger, you must not go near it," he warned, his voice a low, somber hum. "The bridge is cursed. It takes all who try to mend it." Others nodded in grim agreement, their faces etched with a fear that had become a part of them. The stranger listened patiently, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. He looked from their fearful faces to the waiting bridge and back again. "If it was truly cursed," he said, his voice calm and steady, a stark contrast to their anxious whispers, "it would have collapsed into the river long ago. A curse with no power is just a story." His words hung in the air, a challenge to their long-held belief. That night, as the moon cast a silver glow over the valley, the stranger walked to the river's edge. He didn't carry torches or make grand pronouncements. He simply opened his bag, took out his tools, and began to work. The sound of a lone hammer striking wood echoed through the silent village, a rhythm of defiance against 2 decades of stillness. The villagers watched from the safety of their homes, their windows glowing like suspicious eyes in the dark. They gathered in small, hushed groups, their whispers carried on the night breeze. "He'll fall," one predicted, shaking his head. "Just like the others." Another clutched a charm, murmuring, "The river spirit will claim him by morning. He'll vanish without a trace." They expected a scream, a splash, a sign that the curse was real. But the only sounds were the steady knock of the hammer and the gentle lapping of the river. Day after day, the stranger continued his work. He wasn't rushed, nor was he reckless. His movements were deliberate, precise. Each morning, the villagers would wake and peer towards the river, a knot of dread and fascination in their stomachs. And each morning, they saw progress. One more plank laid, connecting the past to the future. One more support beam secured, a step towards stability. One more rope tied, weaving together a thread of hope where there had been only a void. And nothing happened. No phantom hands reached from the water. No sudden gust of wind swept him away. The sun rose and set, the moon waxed and waned, and the stranger simply built. The bridge, once a symbol of failure, began to take shape again. It grew, plank by plank, transforming from a skeleton into a body, its form becoming whole under the stranger's patient hands. The villagers' fear slowly began to curdle, replaced by a reluctant, burgeoning sense of awe. Finally, the day came. The last piece of timber was hammered into place. The final nail was driven home. The bridge was complete. It stood not as a grand marvel of engineering, but as a simple, sturdy wooden path connecting the 2 sides of the river, the 2 sides of the village. The stranger, wiping sweat from his brow, stood at the entrance. The entire village had gathered, a silent, expectant crowd. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the first plank. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. They held their breath. their hearts pounding in their chests. The wood creaked under his weight, a groan that echoed the villagers' 20 years of anxiety. The wind, as if on cue, kicked up, howling through the valley, whistling a mournful tune around the new structure. It seemed for a moment that their fears might be realized, that the curse was just waiting for this final test. But the bridge held. It stood strong, resilient, defiant. The stranger walked steadily, his footsteps a firm, rhythmic beat against the wood. He reached the middle, the very point where the old bridge had stopped and where fear had taken root. He paused, turned, and then continued on. When his feet touched the solid ground of the other side, a cheer erupted from a few of the younger villagers, a sound that had not been heard in relation to the bridge for a generation. He turned back to face them, a wide, triumphant smile on his face, and waved. "It was never cursed!" he shouted, his voice carrying clearly across the water. "It was only unfinished." His words were a revelation, a key unlocking a prison of fear. One by one, hesitantly at first, the villagers stepped onto the bridge. A child, then her father, then the village elder himself. They crossed, their tentative steps growing more confident with each plank. They reached the other side, looking back at the path they had just taken as if seeing it for the first time. They looked at each other, a new understanding dawning in their eyes. The two halves of the village, separated for so long, met in the middle, shaking hands, embracing. On that day, they learned a profound lesson, not from a book or a sermon, but from the simple act of a stranger who chose to build instead of fear. They realized that sometimes the only curse that holds us back is the one we create in our own minds. It's the fear of failure, the fear of the unknown, the weight of stories we tell ourselves. And sometimes that project you've abandoned, that dream you've put on hold, that bridge that waits in your own life, it isn't cursed, it's just waiting. Waiting for your courage to pick up the tools and finish the job. Thank you so much for watching. What's the unfinished bridge in your life? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for joining me for this story. If it touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that inspires. We'll see you next time.